Welcome back to History Revealed. Today I'm going to be reacting to the new trailer that's just dropped for the Napoleon film by Ridley Scott. Now, Ridley Scott has done some incredible films before, whether it be Alien or Gladiator, so I'm pretty sure this one's going to be a real treat for us. Now, Napoleon, as you all probably know, is one of history's most compelling characters. Absolutely fascinating man, who is probably one of the greatest generals of all time. But he's got an incredible backstory and rise to power, which hopefully the film covers. So without further ado, let's get into the trailer. Okay, so we can see immediately that the Egyptian campaign is covered, which is great because it's one of the most intriguing parts of Napoleon's story. A sideshow to the main battle that was going on in Europe at the time, but nevertheless hugely significant. So here we go. Okay, immediately, just seeing that image of Napoleon on a horse just gets my historical antenna up. Napoleon did not lead cavalry charges. He did not. So some of his marshals were famous for it, Marshal Ney or Marshal Murat, but Napoleon was an artilleryman, first and foremost. Obviously, he led entire armies later, but he did not lead cavalry charges. Now, I'm not going to nitpick everything and say this is historically inaccurate. Artistic license is very important, and let's face it, Napoleon looks very cool on a cavalry charge.
No doubt you've seen the chaos in the streets. We must make an example, or France will fall.
Okay, yeah, there's the guillotine falling. This is none other than the execution of Marie Antoinette. So one of the most important events of the, well, not one of the most important, but one of the most sort of evocative moments of the French Revolution, when the Queen, the great Ayah, who was the great Ayah of the revolution at so many points, is executed. She was known as Madame Deficit for her love of gambling, and she really, whether she's the scapegoat or not is a matter of historical debate, but she is really sort of a real focal point for anger of the French Revolution, both at the time and afterwards. To what extent she's responsible for a lot of the things she's accused of is debatable.
What would you do if this society?
So, interesting detail there. Napoleon was not present at the execution of Marie Antoinette. He was in the army serving in the south of France at the time. So that part, it looks good for dramatic effect, you know, him witnessing this great event of the revolution. But yeah, in real life, he wasn't there.
This assignment of defense was transferred to you.
Okay, that looked phenomenal. So what that was depicting was the 13th of Vendémiaire, and that was when Napoleon put down a royalist uprising on the streets of Paris. That's right, he used military force to put down the rebellion, and famously, he's an artillery officer, he used his cannons, and he wrote that with a whiff of grape shot, they were put down. Now, grape shot or canister shot is where many small balls are put into the cannon and they're shot out, making the cannon like a giant shotgun. There's a wide spread of ammunition that goes across an area, and it is incredibly deadly at close range. And it was with lethal effectiveness that Napoleon used it on the streets that day. Hundreds were killed, and Napoleon made a name for himself. Now, bear in mind, he was still in his early 20s at this time. Still in his early 20s, and this was absolutely instrumental in propelling him forward. So there was the Siege of Toulon, his great victory there, and this, where he had the help of his future brother-in-law, as we've mentioned him before, Murat, later Marshal Murat. So instrumental event, and I love that they're depicting it. Really adds to the grittiness, the sort of nature of the street battle that took place, and it's a reminder that sort of France was at war with Europe at this time, and they were having to fight a war on several fronts against several different powers and fight the enemy within. And Napoleon was as much a part of that as anyone else. He fought France's enemies both within and without.
I promise you brilliant successes.
A reminder of Ridley Scott's storied career. Makes me more excited for the film.
What is this costume you have on?
This is my uniform.
Battle of Toulon, or Siege of
I
Toulon.
led the French victory at Toulon.
What is...
Okay, we're going to talk about the Siege of Toulon. So that is Napoleon's first victory on the battlefield. So Toulon is a major French port on the south coast, and it was captured by the British with the help of counter-revolutionaries, French counter-revolutionaries, and it's Napoleon's job to get it back. And like I said before, he's a very young man at this time, and he's in his early 20s, a pretty much unknown officer who's leading the assault on this city. And what he does, as was depicted there, he attacks the walls. And not sure about the ladders as such. The ladders were used like that, but whatever. Artistic license. It looks impressive. And he leads the attack, and the port of Toulon is recaptured. Phenomenal success. Now, Napoleon is wounded. I don't know if the film will show it. He is wounded in the leg by a British soldier. Now, the whole legend of Napoleon could have ended there. The whole thing could have finished before it had a chance to begin, because, as you know, there's an artery in the leg, and should the bayonet that wounded him have got that artery, it would have been game over for Mr. Bonaparte. But as it happens, he recovered from his wound, he achieved a great victory, and well, the rest is history. And of course, the other thing which that clip just depicts is him meeting his wife, the future Josephine Bonaparte. Now, they had a very rough marriage, shall we say. Josephine, put it this way, she was no nun. She had plenty of affairs in her own marriage and with other married men, both before and after she married Napoleon. She cheated on him with an officer. I'm not sure if he was a cavalry officer. I think he was a hussar officer. Now, don't feel too sorry for Napoleon. I mean, he, as a powerful man of his time, was no different. He had plenty of mistresses, and many of which I'm sure we will come across in the film. It was an important part of his life. So there you go. Unhappy marriages are not just a modern phenomenon.
What is your name?
Napoleon.
Has the course of my life just changed?
Yes.
Napoleon.
I'm destined.
Okay, right. I am not impressed with that. Napoleon did not order his troops to fire at the pyramids. I don't know if I'll have to see the film, obviously, but I don't know what the context of that is. That is utter rubbish. Utter rubbish. In fact, I'll be making a I'll be making a short or a TikTok video about the myths about Napoleon, the pyramids, and the Sphinx. But I understand artistic license. I'm not impressed with that. You should also know the Battle of the Pyramids, which was Napoleon's great victory in Egypt, didn't take place at the pyramids. Whilst the pyramids were faintly visible, they were several miles away from the pyramids. But that doesn't change the fact it was a superb victory for Napoleon.
For greatness. But those in power will only see me as a sword.
I suggest you take the throne as king.
Shall we vote?
Okay, I love that scene because that depicts the coup, Napoleon taking power, the 18th of Brumaire. Now, I don't know if the film will depict it, but that actually started as an absolute farce for Napoleon. He went into the chamber to overthrow the Directory, the political order, and he was beaten up. The deputies attacked him. It did not go well, and he was driven out of the chamber. And he was only saved, believe it or not, by his brother, Lucien Bonaparte, as well as one of his comrades, later Joachim Murat. I think I pronounced that correctly. Later Marshal Murat, who also became Napoleon's brother-in-law. But they were the ones who saved the day and delivered power for Napoleon because it didn't go so well for him. And as we can see on the screen now, Napoleon crowning himself emperor. Now, this is significant because Napoleon wanted to be crowned by the Pope, but in a last-minute display of his power over the power, the authority of the Pope, as he went to crown Napoleon, what Napoleon did was he took the crown off the Pope and crowned himself, as if to say, even this man who is the representative of God is less powerful than I am. Real power move there by the emperor.
This vermin has held the world hostage.
Okay, I love that already. That looks like, as you could probably tell from the infantry square and the British flag, that's the Battle of Waterloo, one of the largest charges of the Napoleonic Wars. Marshal Ney against the British infantry, who formed squares that wavered but did not break. Superb display of discipline against probably the finest cavalry in Europe.
With his egotism and his lack of simple good manners.
Okay, Napoleon the Loverboy could be a film of its own. He had many mistresses across both of his marriages. No shortage of action on the battlefield and in the bedroom for Mr. Bonaparte. And believe it or not, he even shared, well, not at the same time, but a couple of his mistresses were also the mistresses of the Duke of Wellington. Believe it or not. And I'm afraid for poor Napoleon, Wellington beat him on the battlefield and in the bedroom, because one of these women, a woman known as Marguerite Georges, I think it's pronounced, or Georges, she was a prominent actress of the time, and she even compared the exploits of both of them and said that the Duke was by far the stronger of the two. So bad luck for Napoleon that Wellington would beat him in every regard. And if Napoleon was bad when it came to mistresses, Wellington was far worse. Perhaps didn't love his wife, maybe the stress of the job, but absolutely no shortage of mistresses wherever he went. And people often commented on his exploits for better or for worse, shall we say. But and by the way, that's not the reason he was named the Iron Duke. I mean, this could be a very different type of video if we go off too far on that track. So I think it's best we move on.
You think you're great. You are just a tiny little brute that is nothing without me.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix is an interesting choice because whilst he's a phenomenal actor, he's in his late 40s, and much of the film, especially in Napoleon's early career, is Napoleon's a guy in his 20s. So I think that's an interesting choice of actor for Napoleon. Hopefully, his acting skills will compensate for the 2 decades out of range they are with the age.
All of Europe is uniting forces against me.
What's the outcome of this if you don't succeed?
Your Majesty, we are discovered.
Good.
It's a trap!
I'm the first to admit when I make a mistake. I simply never do.
Okay, so that scene was just depicted of a really harrowing scene of Russian soldiers falling into the icy waters is the Battle of Austerlitz. Now, Austerlitz was Napoleon's masterpiece. He defeated several nations at once in an incredible battle. And that particular scene depicts an event that is true. So the cannons did fire at the icy ponds that were on the battlefield, and troops did fall through the ice. However, it was later discovered that very, very few died because the water wasn't very deep, and therefore it wasn't too difficult to get them out. There were plenty of horses, though, that were found in there. So harder for the horses, but the men, it wasn't particularly significant. However, the coalition took enormous casualties that day, and Napoleon emerged victorious in one of history's most sort of stunning battles. So as for Napoleon never making a mistake, interesting that they chose that quote, because clearly he made tons of mistakes for all his incredible victories, unparalleled in military history. The mistakes were many. First and foremost, the invasion of Russia lost a huge proportion of the Grand Armée, his best troops, and failed to conquer conquer the Russians, they counterattacked and put France on it was the beginning of the end for Napoleon and the French Empire. So, that's pretty as big as it gets, really, an invasion of Russia, as the Germans later found out that there were terrible consequences for that. And like the Germans, who ended up with the Russians in their capital, that's exactly what happened to Napoleon. Just a couple of years later, Russian soldiers were marching through Paris. So what was supposed to be the great French victory through the Russian capital eventually became the Russian victory through the French capital. But putting that to one side, cinematically, so far, this film looks incredible. I think we're all in for a real treat. So historical epics are sort of few and far between these days, especially historical epics of real value. So I really hope they can do a good job with this one. It's looking good so far. Okay, so that looks fantastic, absolutely superb. I'm interested to hear what you've all got to say. Tell me in the comments below, when you watch a historical epic like this, what are you looking for? Are you looking for historical accuracy? Are you looking for the cinematic value? So, as we well know, to be historically accurate could often make a film really boring, particularly with battles. A lot of the time, this is one of the most interesting aspects, I think, of military history. In battles, often nothing happens for long periods of time, and often you can't really depict that in a film. It has to be action-packed, it has to be constantly moving. You can't have, they sat around for ages and waited for an attack, and an attack didn't come. Take the Battle of Agincourt. Both armies were standing off against each other, waiting for hours. You can't put that in a film. Just can't do it. So, are you looking for the battle scenes, maybe the personalities? People have got very different views on this. I tend to stick to allowing some artistic license, but not too much. So you get ludicrous films like Braveheart or The Patriot, historically wise, even if they look cinematically impressive. To me, they are so historically inaccurate, they're just utterly ruined. So I think I'd say 90% maybe. Historical accuracy for me. I'll give them that 10% wiggle room for the artistic license. And I think the question is, we've not seen it from the trailer. We can see that the Egyptian campaigns there, the machinations in Paris, the early part of Napoleon's career, and of course his Austerlitz and other major battles. But there will naturally have to be some they leave out. You can't have, in the career of Napoleon, which is so long and so broad, he fought so many battles, you'll have to leave something out. I wonder if they'll leave out the Spanish campaign. It'll also be interesting to see the role of the marshals. So that's something is an interesting feature of Napoleon's career, are the marshals who served alongside him. Of differing quality. Marshal Ney is famous because of his cavalry charge at Waterloo. A really brave man, incredible soldier. But at Waterloo, he didn't perform as well as he could have done. But there's plenty of others like Marshal Murat, very brave cavalry commander, as we've mentioned before. Marshal Davout, considered the greatest of the marshals, one of the great soldiers of the Napoleonic Wars, or even the Spanish theatre will be interesting. Will they mention Spain, which was this huge theatre of war of the Napoleonic Wars, but in a more guerrilla way? It was guerrilla fighting. It wasn't. There were big battles, but it was a much more sort of tit for tat type thing. Territory constantly changing hands. Wellington was, of course, involved. Marshal Suchet, probably one of Napoleon's most competent marshals. Napoleon himself was in and out of Spain. And how the soldiers would be depicted. We've got a glimpse of them in the trailers, but the different types of soldiers across the Napoleonic Wars is absolutely immense. You've got the famous, the brilliant Imperial Guard. Will they just be in the background? Will we get to see them up close? Because that will be phenomenal. They went almost undefeated on their own in almost 20 years of war, but of course famously ran away at Waterloo, which was the end of not just the Guard, but really the end of Napoleon for good. Or some of the British infantry whichever very famous regiments took part, the Polish cavalry who fought for Napoleon. The list is endless, so all very exciting to see. I'm really looking forward to it, and when the film itself comes out, maybe I'll make another video when we've got more information, because this could be huge. So thank you for watching History Revealed today. I'd love to hear what you've all got to think about Napoleon. So leave a comment and sacrifice the god of the algorithm below. Like, subscribe. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram, so follow me there at History Revealed. Love to hear from you, and I will see you on the next one.